Welcome to Chapter 14 of the OpenStax Psychology textbook. My name is Matthew Poole, and today we're going to be going over stress, lifestyle, and health. So when it comes to stress, this is a process where individuals perceive and respond to events that they appraise as overwhelming or threatening to your health or well-being. So it's very important how we appraise or judge demanding/threatening events or stressors, which can influence our reaction. So our primary appraisal, whenever we have a stressful event occur, this is the judgment about the degree of potential harm/threat to our well-being that a stressor may entail. So what I mean by this is whenever we primarily appraise this, are we categorizing this as a threat or a challenge? Now, something that is a threat can actually cause harm to your health or well-being long term. Now, a challenge, though, is a stressor that carries the potential for gain or personal growth. That's like whenever you go to college or you go to school in general. That's a challenge, but it's not something that's going to cause harm to your health or well-being in the long term. It has the potential for gain or growth in the long term. Okay, so once we go through the primary appraisal, we go through the secondary appraisal. This is the judgment of the options available to cope with the stressor and perceptions of how effective such options will be. And a threat is less stressful if we believe something can be done about it. Of course, that makes sense. If we think and we have the mindset that we can actually accomplish or get through something, it's going to be a lot less stressful to us. Okay, so this is for my visual learners. So again, we have the stressor that will occur in life. We have the primary appraisal. Is this a challenge or is it a threat? Do we see this as a challenge that has potential for growth, or is this an actual threat to our health or well-being? Now, if we appraise this as a threat, then we move to the secondary appraisal. What are the potential options and how effective? So if we do believe that we can conquer or get through this threat, we consider this as a low threat because there are effective options in which we can take. Now, if there is ineffective or little to no options to be able to get through this stressor, then that is considered a high threat. And there is such a thing as good stress. As we've talked about over the course of the whole class, there is such a thing as having an optimal level of stress because stress can motivate us to do things. Now, anxiety is something that has a lot of a negative connotation around it, but sometimes having a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of stress on you can actually propel you to perform the best that you can be because your mental faculties are a lot more heightened because of a slight initiation within your fight or flight response. Now, if that goes over to the far right of the bell curve as displayed by figure 14.4, then we are in a sense of distress where our performance tends to decline. We experience fatigue and exhaustion. We feel burnt out and things like that. So there is such a thing as too much stress or anxiety, but having a little bit and being at an optimal level can be good for us. Okay. When it comes to the prevalence of stress, stress is everywhere and it plays a role in our lives to some extent. And stress can evoke a variety of responses, including physiological, cognitive, as well as behavioral responses. So when it comes to physiological, we understand that whenever we experience a perceived threat, that's our nervous system responding to that. So our central nervous system, and then underneath that is the autonomic nervous system, which houses the autonomic nervous system. It is initiated, and you feel that fight or flight response. And that's what's known as your sympathetic nervous system. So your sympathetic nervous system is what riles you up, has that accelerated heart rate, headaches, gastrointestinal problems. You have the cognitive aspect, which is difficulty concentrating or making difficulties, especially when you have stress long term. You can tend to even notice yourself the difficulty in concentrating and your decision making overall. Now, behaviorally, how we handle that stress, what do we do to lower our anxious or stressful state. Some people may do them in legal or illegal ways, as well as productive or not so productive ways, such as drinking alcohol, smoking, or again, just taking actions in general that eliminate the cause of the stress. Do you meditate? Do you take time out of your day? Do you do any sort of self-care? Okay, there's a number of ways that you can go that are productive and non-productive when it comes to dealing with stress. Okay, now as already mentioned, I've basically described this, but your fight or flight response. We've heard this in chapter 3 whenever we talked about biopsychology. So whenever your nervous system is responding to a perceived threat, your sympathetic nervous system, which is again under the autonomic nervous system, which is within the central nervous system, again within the whole nervous system as in its entirety. And so whenever you have that fight or flight response, it's a set of, you'll notice, you can feel them for yourself, a physiological reaction that occurs when an individual encounters a perceived threat. And so a very quick way to understand the fight or flight response, and I know that you can conjure up a memory anyways, but are you ever watching or you're scrolling through a feed on social media and then all of a sudden you're watching like a very calming video of like a car going up a hill and then out of nowhere this screaming demon pops up, right? And so what happens is your sympathetic nervous system kicks in, it responds to a perceived threat, and so you feel like an accelerated heartbeat, your heart goes into your stomach, there's a number of physiological responses. The adrenal glands will be stimulated, and so. But then, almost as soon as that jump scare occurs, you'll notice that your parasympathetic nervous system will come in. Excuse me. Yes, your parasympathetic nervous system will come in, and it will calm you down. Okay. So again, that's just some more physiological responses whenever it comes to fight or flight. So you have also, it's not just about neurotransmitters that are, there are particular glands and such as adrenaline, noradrenaline, and they cause a whole number of responses. So that's pupils dilate, your heart rate increases, muscles tense, and they may tremble, respiration quickens, as well as perspiration will begin. So let's talk about some of these stressors a little bit more in depth. So when it comes to chronic stressors, these are events that persist over an extended period of time, such as long-term unemployment. Acute stressors are brief events that sometimes continue to be experienced as overwhelming well after the event has ended. Okay, so some of these traumatic events that can be included in here that are, actual responses to things that can harm your health or well-being include exposure to military combat, physical assault, terrorist attacks, natural disasters, and car accidents. And so whenever individuals have a traumatic experience or experiences altogether, this can lead to the fruition of post-traumatic stress disorders. And so what happens when individuals have PTSD is it's a chronic stress reaction, including intrusive and painful memories, jumpiness, an exaggerated startle response, and persistent negative emotional states, among other symptoms. Okay, so let's talk about life changes. Whether we like to, admit it or not, we're going to all go through life changes throughout the course of our lifespan. And so no matter if it's good or bad, there is some sort of stress that's involved either as a side effect or directly as a result of a good life change. Okay, and it's self-explanatory for bad life changes. Nobody likes that inherently. But it may be necessary to get you to where you need to be. All right, so in the 1960s, Holmes and Rahe hypothesized that life events requiring significant changes are stressful, whether they are desirable or undesirable, so they created what's known as the Social Readjustment Rating Scale. Okay, and so when it comes to this SRRS, a scale consisting of 43 life events that require varying degrees of personal adjustment will rank, and there are points associated with each of these life events. And the accumulation of these points can definitely cause physical as well as mental health problems over the course of time. Okay, and so this was developed by asking 394 participants to provide a numerical estimate corresponding to how much readjustment they felt each event would require. So each life event has a score/life change unit, or LCU, from 11 to 100, representing the perceived magnitude of life changes that they involve. So a death of a spouse, of course, was ranked highest at 100, and divorce was ranked second highest at 73 points. Okay. All right. So here are some of the other life events and their point values according to the SRRS. Death of a spouse, divorce is already mentioned. Jail term, marriage in general, even though marriage is considered a positive life change, it's still a significant life change in general, where there's going to be a lot of things accompanied with it that you're going to have to get adjusted to. So that could be stressful, combining your income, having talks about where you're going to live, how the space is going to be shared. There's just a lot of things that go into marriage that I don't think I could even describe within the time frame that we have allotted, within 30 minutes or so. Otherwise, we may be here for a couple of hours, but that's not what this chapter is focused on. Fired from work, retirement, pregnancy, death of a close friend, son or daughter leaving home, having that empty nest syndrome, trouble with a boss always causes stress. Mortgage or loan less than $10,000, that's whenever we see it a little bit lower, and change in eating habits. Okay, moving forward. Let's talk about daily hassles. So these aren't things that are necessarily life stressors, but they're minor irritations and annoyances that are a part of our everyday life. And so they can often lead to negative and distressed mood states and can build up and leaving us feeling stressed. So this is like our daily commute, especially if you have a long commute or one that's very busy, such as using public transportation. Okay, so daily hassles, they're minor irritations, but there's something that can build up and leave us in a negative mood. All right. Unfortunately, I don't know if all daily hassles are completely unavoidable, but we can make steps to alleviating them. All right. Now, let's talk about other stressors. So, job strain as well as job burnout. Whenever you're picking your occupation in life, there's going to be a trade-off. Whenever you have to at least be able to choose your sacrifice in life of, do I go to college and get a job that I want that may be either it is stressful or maybe not as stressful? Do I receive less pay for the less stressful job or receive more pay for the better job, but it may be more stressful? These are all questions that you have to ask yourself. But whenever individuals are constantly exposed to unpleasant elements such as harassment, physical violence, constant frustration, this is not good. I'm telling you, stress and being overly stressed impacts your physical as well as mental health over the course of your career. So that's something to really be mindful of if you're wanting a long career in a particular area of study. If it's worth it to you to deal with those high stress, if you have a high propensity for dealing with stressful situations, I wish you well and think that you'll do excellent. But for other people, it can really be a detriment to your physical health over time. And who are we without our physical health as well as our mental health? That is just my opinion. You're welcome to have a difference of that ideology, but that's just my perspective. When it comes to job strain, this is the work situation that combines excessive job demands and workload with little discretion in decision making or job control. So this is associated with that increase of physical problems where you're having excess job demands on you. You're like a cog in a machine and you have little to no discretion or decision making with your job. Okay? So, like with being a college teacher, I do actually have a lot of discretion and decision making in my position. That's why I enjoy it so much. But if I were to go to the K-12 ranks, they it's a whole different ballgame from what I have observed, in that they have a lot of expectations on them from their state, from their district, from their school, from their administration. And because of that, they have very little, if you really think about it from a macro perspective, very little discretion in decision making, because they have to teach a particular rubric and things like that. The academic freedom is not much seen in K-12 as it is in higher education. So they do have little decision-making abilities within the moment of their day-to-day life, but when it comes to the macro perspective, I can see why that's a lot of teachers. The average, I don't know exactly what it is, but the last number I heard was like the average teacher lasts about 5 years. And that data may have changed depending on the time frame that you're looking at this video, but that's a pretty high burnout rate. Okay, and so when I say burnout, I mean just a general sense of emotional exhaustion in relation to one's occupation. All right, let's talk about stress and illness, psychophysiological disorders, stress in the immune system, the cardiovascular disorders, personality types, depression in the heart, asthma, and tension headaches. Now, when it comes to psychophysiological disorders, these include chronic stress and its sustained physiological reactions that lead to the wear and tear on the body. So to give a definition to these disorders, it's the physical disorders / diseases whose symptoms are brought about or worsened by stress and emotional factors. So this includes tension headaches, asthma, acne, hypertension, IBS, and coronary heart disease. So there are physiological disorders that are enhanced as a result of mental stress. All right, so let's look at a study in 1998. I know it's a little bit of an older study, but it's still relevant. And your book still highlights this that we use. So it's the study on stress and immune function, where they studied 276 healthy volunteers and about recent stressful experiences. After the interview, they were given nasal drops containing the cold virus, and the results were shocking. After 1 month of having no chronic stressor, but having the cold drops, the percentage of people who developed a cold was about 35%. Now, those who had a chronic stressor of again over a month, or who have experienced it for more than a month, but had the cold disease, they were 50% likely to get to develop a cold. Now, when it comes to over 3 months of a stressor, the individuals, it remained the same, still about 35%, but they were just over close to 55%, between 53 to 55% of the participants actually developed a cold. Okay, those who reported having a chronic stressor of at least 6 months, that it was about the same, maybe a little bit less than the 3 months, but still a lot more likely to develop a cold after receiving the nasal drops than those individuals who had no chronic stressor. So it's very evident that the immune system is compromised by significant stressful events that are chronic and lasting long term. So something to be mindful of. Stress and aging. Okay, it's no question that chronic stress impacts how quickly you age. There is a image that I saw, it's been some time, but an image of a soldier, United States soldier, who went to war, and it showed a picture of him before he went to war and after he went to war, after just about a few years. And the difference was so vast. He looked like a seasoned, just gone through the most rigorous event in his life, which of course he did, which was war. And so the stress involved in that was so significant that it looked like he aged multiple years rather than just a couple. And this remains true when it comes to biology, when it comes to chronic stressors, because at the end of your DNA, at the end of your chromosome, you have what's known as telomeres. And telomeres are a protective layer of these chromosomes. And whenever they are shortened due to stress and other factors in your life, whatever your lifestyle is, that can, whenever those telomeres are diminished, that stops the proliferation of new cells. Okay, and so that will lead to you aging more rapidly, and it's especially easy to see physically. So whenever it comes to your lifestyle, what you're putting in your body, I think that's why we're becoming more health conscious, because we have more people becoming more understanding of the little things that they do that can accumulate over time, as well as their career. That it's not just just being able to withstand what you're going through in life. That's important to be able to be strong, but it may come to a certain point where it's so much that literally causes you to age more quickly. So something to keep in mind. Cardiovascular disorders. So the cardiovascular system plays a central role in the stress response, making it a key focus in the studies of psychophysiological disorders. So heart disease, a cardiovascular disorder, a major risk factor for heart disease is hypertension, which is high blood pressure, right? High blood pressure can be caused by stressors including job strain, marital conflict, and natural disasters, and it forces the heart to pump harder, thus putting increased physical strain on your heart. It really doesn't have any symptoms, and it can lead to a heart attack, stroke, or heart failure. So again, another example of how stress can, and one of the top, if not the top, difficulties that, especially here in the United States, individuals experience is heart disease, and that can lead to an early and unfortunate death, be it due to heart attack, stroke, or heart failure. So, again, something to be mindful of. Now, when it comes to type A and B personalities, we've all at least probably heard of this in passing, and I don't know if it's this black and white, and it can depend on the situation, but we have tend to hypothesize that individuals are grouped into either a type A or type B personality. Type A personalities are individuals who are extremely competitive, intensely driven. They may be more impatient, rushed, and hostile towards others. And type B individuals tend to be laid back and relaxed. All right? Now, when it comes to the study of these two personality types, individuals who identify with type A were over 6 times more likely to have a heart attack by age 55. So I'm not trying to say that that's definitely going to be individuals' fate, but the data does not lie. Okay. Depression in the heart. Research actually does suggest a relationship exists between depression and heart disease. So one reason for this seems to be that people diagnosed with depression as children have been found more likely to be obese, smoke, physically inactive, drink. And so I don't know that it's inherently that the depression causes heart disease, but it may be as a result of the depression and how individuals engage with and behave or cope with the depression impacts their overall physical health. Okay? Moving forward. Let's talk about regulating stress now that we've talked about the factors that cause stress. So we have what's known as problem-focused coping and emotion-focused coping. When it comes to problem-focused coping, this is whenever individuals attempt to manage or alter the problem that is causing them to experience stress. So do you attack the problem head on? Let's say that you fail a test. Do you reach out to the instructor for extra help? Do you seek out a tutor? Do you study more on your own time? Are you attacking the problem head on? Or are you engaging in emotion-focused coping? This is simply the efforts to change or reduce the negative emotions associated with the stress. So do you, after you fail a test, instead of going to find a tutor, do you go and play video games, watch a movie, engage in substance use to distract yourself from the problem? Both are ways to cope with, but they're very distinct in their productivity level, to say the least. When it comes to social support, a fundamental human motive that is needed to form and maintain strong, stable relationships. So to give a definition to it, this is the soothing impact of friends, family, and acquaintances. They can include guidance, encouragement, acceptance, emotional comfort, and tangible assistance. We all need social support because individuals with stronger social relationships have a 50% greater likelihood of survival compared to those with real social relationships. All right. Now, research also suggests that social support boosts the immune system and reduces blood pressure. Okay. All right. Let's talk about some other ways to reduce and cope with stress. Exercise, I feel like, is underrated. I think that we're becoming more to the conclusion and the overall understanding that exercise naturally releases those feel-good endorphins and neurotransmitters and is a way for you to release the stress that you're experiencing. It's something that I could take out of my own book. I can practice what I preach a little bit more, but I do notice whenever my wife and I go out and engage in exercise together, we feel so much better after the day that we had, be it stressful or just relaxing from the daily hassles that we experienced. It's definitely so much encouraged from my end. It's something I should do a little bit more of. Meditation and relaxation. So when it comes to meditation, practicing mindfulness, taking time out of your day, put your phone down, focusing on a particular area of your body, such as your breath, can really, for at least, starting out, it may take some time to really get into meditation, but starting with 5 minutes, then moving to 10 minutes, up to 15, and then 30, has been shown through research that it can reduce overall levels of anxiety and depression and can impact your sleep positively. Okay? Biofeedback. This is a way in which we can use electronic equipment to measure a person's involuntary activity and provide feedback to help the person gain a level of voluntary control of their processes so they can understand when they are about to experience stressful events, so they can understand, have a better either mindset as well as preparedness to whenever they go into these stressful events, so they can cope with it more effectively. All right, so let's talk about the pursuit of happiness. What in the world is happiness, right? That's something that we all ask. And there are a number of things that can go into happiness, and I feel like it's defined by the person. But there are some overall things that I think that can contribute to happiness, and some things that have been associated with research. So apparently, according to research, life satisfaction usually increases with age, either due to more money, the proliferation and expanding of a family, becoming more enriched in your church or your religion, family and social relationships, as well as your culture. So whenever it comes to family and social relationships, married people report being happier than those who are not. Okay? And it's not that marriage is always, roses and butterflies. It's that there's a responsibility in being married, and potentially even in that case being a father or a mother. And it's not all rainbows and butterflies, but that responsibility associated with those attributes is meaningful. It's meaning. And when you have meaning, I feel like that's a strong indicator and propensity for propelling you to be happy long term. Okay? Also, when it comes to money, according to research, and I'd like to see how these numbers have changed because of inflation, but whenever your textbook wrote this information, we could probably adjust this for inflation by using a calculator. But happiness only increases with an income up to $75,000. After that, happiness doesn't seem to be affected. But I would challenge that hypothesis. I don't know. If you'd like to help me in this research, my Venmo is... No, I'm just kidding. Don't worry about that. As well as when it comes to religion, what interests me about religion particularly is that religiosity is associated with greater well-being, but does not make a difference in nations with favorable living conditions. So in poorer countries, religiosity is considered with a higher sense of well-being, but not so much here in the western part of the world, specifically in the United States. Okay? So that is going to conclude Chapter 14 of the OpenStax Psychology textbook. I will see you in the next one for Chapter 15, where we'll be talking about psychopathology as well as mental disorders. So go check that out. See you in the next one. Have a great day. Bye-bye.